Yes, Brendan Gallagher. What an absolute warrior, a feisty hockey player, somebody that has really bolstered up his reputation amongst the fan base of the Montreal Canadiens the past few years. And for good reason, too. Gallagher, at 29 years old, is a historied Montreal Canadiens veteran at this point, posting up multiple 30-goal seasons after making his debut with the team in 2012-2013. It's tough to believe for a lot of Canadiens fans that he has actually been on the team for 10 years now, but Brendan Gallagher is in a position where this season, plagued by injuries, plagued by a bad Montreal Canadiens team, and plagued by the contract that he now has, which he had never had before, the conversation as to Gallagher and his future with Montreal is all of a sudden a product of discussion, I guess you could go out there and say. So, let's go over onto the Montreal Gazette, because this article published by Stu Cowan on, April 20th? So yeah, yesterday. Are Brendan Gallagher's days with the Canadiens numbered? And highlight what it is that Cowan has to say about the gritty, feisty, fighty Montreal Canadiens forward. You have to wonder if the LA Kings might have interest in the veteran winger as Habs GM Kent Hughes looks to reshape the team. Before we go over this, though, let's go over the profile of Gallagher and just take a look at how everything has gone the past few months over here. So, Gallagher, as everybody knows, 29 years old, 5'9", 183, a right-handed right-wing forward, making $6.5 million a season until the end of the 2027 year. Now, that means he'll be 34 years old when the contract does expire. Actually, he'll be 35 because his birthday is in May. So, yeah, he's 35 years old when that contract expires. And you gotta ask yourself, okay, he's making $6.5 million a season right now. What's that gonna look like next year? What's that gonna look like in 2 years? What's that gonna look like in 3 years? What is it gonna look like when he's 34 years old and he's got a year left at 6.5? Well, Brendan Gallagher this season had 19 points in 51 games played, on pace for 21 points in the 56-game sample. Let's do the math over 82 just so it's a little bit more helpful for us here. 19 divided by 51 multiplied out by 82 is equal to 30.5. So a 31-point pace over 82 games is what Gallagher was on pace for this year. Again, the Canadiens were a bad team. The Canadiens, a lot of them at least, had bad years. But for Brendan Gallagher, the big part that stands out to me in his statistical profile is the fact that he's only got 6 goals in 51 games. Do the math here, 6 divvy 51 multiplied out by 82, Gallagher was on pace for a whopping total of 10 goals on the season. Now, 10 goals is not that great, especially considering the fact that last season in 35 games he scored himself 14 goals. And sure, in the postseason when they went to the finals, Gallagher in 22 games only had 2 goals, but we've discussed this at length before, but the Canadiens going to the finals were such a different kind of team that Gallagher getting 6 points and 2 goals in 22 games doesn't really matter. It was like, okay, I know Gallagher did his job. He played with they played in the shutdown line, and they shut down opposition's lines, which is what they needed to do. Doesn't matter they didn't get any points, because he got points from everybody else. So Gallagher played a very specific role when they went to the finals, but this season, that role just hasn't really been there in the same length. I mean, he definitely is not the same 30-goal scorer that he was a mere 4 years ago. And so you take a look at Gallagher, and you see the money, you see the contract, and you see the points, and you say, is this guy still worth it? So, let's go over onto Cowan's piece on the Gazette and read what it is he has to say. The Canadiens have only 5 games left this season, and you have to wonder if they might be Gallagher's last ones with the Habs. Winning has always been the most important thing, and you can't turn that off, Gallagher said in January after Kent Hughes was hired as the new GM. That being said, being a Montreal Canadien is pretty important to me as well. The article talks about how Kent Hughes would probably like to unload the final 5 seasons of Gallagher's 6-year, $39 million contract with an AAV of 6.5. The 29-year-old winger probably wouldn't mind going to a team that has a better chance of winning the Stanley Cup in the near future. You have to wonder if the LA Kings might have interest in Gallagher and the possibility of reuniting him with former Canadiens linemate Philippe Danault. Marc Bergevin, who signed Gallagher to his $39 million contract while GM of the Canadiens and is one of the player's biggest fans, is a senior advisor to Kings GM Rob Blake. The article then highlights how Dustin Brown, pretty old guy. It also talks about how Philippe Danault, who is on the Kings right now, is off to a fantastic start with the team. I mean, it says start, I know we're at the end of the year, but he's saying start as in, okay, he's got a few years left on the contract he's on, not necessarily start to the season. Yeah, it is not really the start of the season. I'm happy for Phil, Gallagher said, after practice Wednesday in Brossard. Even talking to him, you can see that he loved his time in Montreal, he loved being here, he loved being a Montreal Canadien, he just felt like it was time for him to move on. It's been good to see he's been given some more opportunity, he's been playing on the power play, he's being put in new positions, and he's succeeding. He's having a really good year for a good hockey team, and he's enjoying it. You're happy for your friends wherever they are, and wherever they have success, and he's definitely a friend. My job as a player is to get myself ready and to be a good player, and that's what I'm going to do, Gallagher said. I'm going to take care of myself. There will be conversations that happen where the Habs see me fit and all that, but right now for me, it's just getting back to what I can be and what I know I'll be. It's not really a concern, it's just putting in the work and getting back to the level that he was at before. There are a few more quotes talking about Gallagher and his perspective on what it's like being a Canadian right now, etc., and so now we talk about the Kings. They're a good team. And obviously you have Danault signed on for a few more years after this one. You have Brendan Gallagher also in a position where he's got that contract till 2027. And so you ask yourself, would the LA Kings even be interested in a player like Brendan Gallagher coming onto their team? I think the answer would probably be yes. I think every team, if you said to them, hey, Brendan Gallagher, would you want this guy? They would all say yes because they would all have themselves an opportunity to give minutes to a guy who is of Brendan Gallagher's profile and stature and, you know, the way he plays, right? And as the article did say, Dustin Brown, is making $5.875 million this season, is expiring, and he is 37 years old, so if you weren't a fan of just taking away all the older guys and sending in all these young players the LA Kings do have, so Jared Anderson-Dolan, Tyler Madden, Kupari, etc., if you wanted to say, hey, let's fill in that Dustin Brown spot with another player who is also feisty, who is also skilled and all that, we can go with Brendan Gallagher instead. How does that feel? That's only an increase of $700,000. I honestly think it would be a pretty interesting fit. Plus, the fact that you do have Philippe Danault already there makes things extraordinarily more interesting in my opinion too, because as we all know, I mean, Danault-Gallagher was an incredible defensively minded line. It's just, in LA, you wonder if you do, hypothetically, ever get that Danault and Gallagher pairing once again, does that line just shift to becoming the shutdown defensive line? Like, do you not have any opportunity offensively anymore for Danault and for Gallagher? Does Gallagher ever hit 30 goals again? I don't really know if that's possible anymore, but of course, you know, anything can happen, especially when you've got the work ethic and drive that a guy like Brendan Gallagher does. But there's more reason to believe that LA probably wouldn't have that same kind of dilemma. Oh, you have Danault, you have Gallagher, they're going to be forced into a box of playing that defensive style, and they're not going to get any offense done. Because you already have Anze Kopitar there, he's got a pretty solid two-way game. You have Quinton Byfield, who, I get it, he's not supposed to be a purely defensively minded center. He's got some really good offensive flair, but you're developing him in such a way that you're making sure that the defensive game of his is still rounded out. Same with Alex Turcotte. He's a defensively minded guy. There are just so many more opportunities for defensive responsibility to be shared throughout the lineup in LA than in Montreal that I could totally understand if Brendan Gallagher and Philippe Danault, of all people, were to suit up for the Kings in the next few years and say, hey, darn it, these guys are both producing like crazy. Why couldn't they do this in Montreal? Well, it's because in Montreal, they had all the responsibility of being that defensive line. It's why Gallagher only had 2 goals in the playoffs last year when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals and everybody said he did a good job. So, talk to me in the comments, your thoughts about Gallagher and the LA Kings, the idea of them potentially being interested because Dustin Brown is expiring, and the fact that Bergevin is there, and the fact that Danault is already there too. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video tonight. And again, the link will be in the description if you want to go ahead and read Cohen's piece on the Gazette. And bye.